And for today's business matters, the first time people in Austin, Texas can now call a ride without a driver from the Uber app. Users can book a ride in the autonomous Jaguar I-Pace. The vehicles fit up to 4 passengers. Uber users can boost their chances of getting a Waymo driverless car by adjusting their rider preferences. There is no added cost, but if you do not want to go driverless, you can request a different car. Uber plans to expand the driverless rides in other cities as well. They will launch in Atlanta later this year. Democratic governors are starting to hire federal workers fired by the Trump administration. They're looking to convince these newly unemployed workers to work for their states. New York Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday announced a hiring campaign as billboards went up in the nation's capital reading, "New York wants you." Hawaii is fast-tracking recruitment as well. Maryland and New Mexico are convening job fairs. The majority of federal workers laid off or bought out by the Trump administration work outside Washington in regional offices that deal with taxes to weather forecasts to national parks. Hochul said yesterday these are essential jobs requiring many years of specialized experience done by people with bills to pay and families to feed. A spokesperson for President Trump responded to the effort saying, quote, "Growing the public sector is not President Trump's definition of job creation." AI features are getting rooted into Apple products. The tech giant has launched a new iPad Air with its M3 chip and enhanced artificial intelligence features. Apple is leaning into AI to attract customers and keep up with rivals like Samsung and China's Huawei. Both competitors have been racing to embed AI into their products too. Apple's revamped iPad line supports Apple Intelligence, which is a set of features with access to ChatGPT. Users can write emails, messages, and edit photos and more. The new iPads start at just under $600 and pre-order start today. Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak doesn't like how big tech has grown. He spoke at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona.
And all the big tech companies are just so big. It's like they own our lives. It used to be when I came up with Lincoln, started Apple. We had a computer. You bought a computer. You ran some software on it. And you set up and ran your company or whatever with all this stuff. And it always worked and it was your own. Whatever setups you made worked. Eventually the internet came. After the internet, then came the social web. Then came high bandwidth. And nowadays, you have to subscribe to everything, and then once you subscribe, you don't own it. Yeah. You're going through somebody on the cloud. The cloud is...
And as you know, Wozniak launched Apple with Steve Jobs in the 1970s. He also expressed concern about the trend of tech entrepreneurs like Elon Musk getting involved in politics. He said it makes sense to run a government like a business, but feels the moves Musk has made are too sudden. Wozniak further voiced concern about the use of artificial intelligence, especially issues around AI safety and misinformation. He said that he has made the argument for years that AI needs regulation so that people know if they're seeing something online made by a human or using AI. Tech giants are urging Australia to reconsider its exemption for Alphabet's YouTube in the country's social media ban for children under 16. Tech companies that let minors log in could be hit with hefty multi-million-dollar fines. This applies to Snapchat, TikTok, and Meta-owned platforms Facebook and Instagram. YouTube is exempt because it's considered a key educational tool, and kids are allowed to use it as part of a family account. Meta argues that children experience the same features the government cited to justify the ban, including algorithmic recommendations and as well exposure to harmful content. A class action lawsuit against the maker of Reynolds Wrap aluminum foil is moving forward. A judge ruled that the company must face a proposed lawsuit in New York claiming it misled customers who wanted to buy American. Reynolds is accused of falsely claiming made in USA on its foil packaging. The complaint says that the aluminum ore used to make the foil comes from outside the US, and much of the transformation happens outside the US too. Reynolds tried to get the case dismissed. It argues that this was a lawyer-driven action case trying to profit off a truthful made in USA statement. Tariffs are a major story today. China has responded to the latest trade measures from the Trump administration by suspending key U.S. imports. Beijing revoked soybean import qualifications from 3 American exporters and halted U.S. lumber imports. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the escalating trade tensions.
The suspension comes just hours after China imposed new import levies on $21 billion worth of American agricultural and food products. The 3 affected U.S. companies are CHS Incorporated, Louis Dreyfus Company Grains Merchandising, and EGT. Beijing's retaliation follows the Trump administration's new 10% tariff, which took effect Tuesday. This brings the cumulative tariff rate on certain Chinese imports to 20%, on top of the existing 25% tariffs imposed during Trump's first term on $370 billion worth of Chinese goods. The Trump administration says the tariffs are a response to China's role in supplying fentanyl precursors to Mexico and other countries, which play a major role in the American overdose crisis. In addition to tariffs, China has added 15 U.S. companies to its export control list, preventing Chinese firms from supplying them with dual-use technologies that have both civilian and military applications. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said Monday that multiple response plans to the U.S. tariffs are ready. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that Ottawa will impose immediate 25% tariffs on over $20 billion worth of U.S. imports. European markets saw an immediate reaction to the tariffs. The Pan-European Stock 600 index was down about 1% Tuesday morning, pulling back from the previous session's record high. Germany's blue chip index also fell 1.5% from its record peak. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was also down about 1.5%. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
An international team is assembling for an Alaska LNG project, which is supposed to deliver natural gas from the state, mostly to international markets. The U.S. has asked South Korea and other countries if they're interested in taking part in the project. South Korea's industry minister says South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to establish a group to discuss the gas pipeline. The minister said South Korea has a high dependence on the Middle East for energy supplies, so diversifying import sources is a key part of its energy security. The 2 countries also agreed to discuss energy, shipbuilding, tariffs, and non-tariff barriers. A new mission for SpaceX expand its rocket program beyond Texas and into Florida. The company is planning to invest $1.8 billion for new Starship launch pads and processing facilities in the state. Governor Ron DeSantis' office says this will bring an estimated 600 new full-time jobs to the Space Coast by 2030. But SpaceX has not secured approvals yet to launch Starship from Florida. The U.S. Air Force is leading a review into how Starship launches in the state would impact the local environment. American Airlines is giving its alliance with JetBlue another chance for takeoff by trying to get the Supreme Court on board. American Airlines has asked the justices to reverse a lower court decision that scrapped its partnership with JetBlue Airways. This would have allowed the 2 carriers to coordinate flights and pool revenue. A trial judge found that the partnership violated federal antitrust law, and a federal appeals court in Boston upheld the ruling. American is arguing the joint venture was designed to increase competition and that the lower court's ruling threatens collaborations of all shapes and sizes. Target is warning about consumer spending and the impact of tariffs. Retail giant said today consumer confidence is declining. It said its sales declined in February and it expects sales to only grow around 1% this year. The company also said tariff uncertainty will impact profit this quarter. Target's sluggish results come after Walmart, America's largest retailer, recently warned 2025 would be a rocky year. U.S. Supreme Court justices could be siding with American gun companies. The Mexican government filed a lawsuit accusing the firms of aiding illegal firearms trafficking to drug cartels. The justices heard arguments in an appeal by firearms makers Smith & Wesson and distributor Interstate Arms. The appeal was to a lower court's ruling allowing the Mexican lawsuit to proceed. The companies argue that it should be dismissed under a U.S. law called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, Mexico's lawsuit alleges that the company's new weapons were being sold to gun traffickers to Mexican cartels, but still decided to profit on that market. The Supreme Court task is to decide whether the case can proceed. Serena Williams has gone from the tennis court to the basketball court. The legendary tennis star is now a team owner in the WNBA. Williams will be part of the Toronto Tempo, an expansion franchise scheduled to debut in 2026. Her role will include merchandise collaborations and jersey designs. The WNBA will expand to 13 teams this season. League Commissioner Kathy Engelbert says she would like to have 16 teams before the end of the decade. This past weekend, the Outdoor Adventure and Travel Show in Vancouver, Canada, brought together experts and exhibitors showcasing the latest in outdoor gear and adventure travel destinations. NTD Shane Rankin was at the event. Let's take a look.
As March signals the arrival of spring, many are beginning to plan their next adventure, looking for travel destinations and expert guidance. With over 250 exhibitors, the Outdoor Adventure and Travel Show featured presentations, resources, and tips for travel and outdoor adventures.
I think it's important to not only, number one, pick where do you really want to go, and then you can find the season to make it happen. It also depends on the destination and your availability.
Do you want to go see polar bears? Do you want to see the northern lights? Would you like to see wolves? Do you want to see them in the beautiful fall colors in August or September? These are all things that are important to ask. And then we guide our guests or our clients to a safari that's the best fit for them.
Many exhibitors provide a wide range of travel destinations for people who haven't decided their next trip.
We do have styles for people that want to be more active, but we also have some that are a little bit slower paced.
We go to some of the most beautiful places in the world, so Antarctica, Greenland, Alaska, Svalbard, a true adventure, true expedition travel on small ships.
The event also provided hands-on demonstrations of the latest outdoor equipment for easier travel.
We're vehicle cargo carrying and adventure specialists. So the tent here, really quick opening and closing, keeps you off the ground. You're out of any rain if it's raining.
This is a Western style saddle. These, we keep them on there for the kids because their feet are a little bit too short to reach what we call the stirrup. So your foot goes in the stirrup, you put your hand on the horn to get on the horse, very lightly because they're soft on the back.
Beyond showcasing products and destinations, the show fosters connections among like-minded adventure seekers and encourages people to travel more.
We really connect people to local communities to really be able to explore different places.
Travel now, don't wait. If you have a desire to go somewhere, there's always a way.
Shane Rankin, NTD News, Canada.
The maker of Lindt chocolate will supply chocolate to Canada that's made in Europe to avoid Canadian tariffs imposed to counter the new U.S. customs duties. Lindt produces 95% of the chocolates it sells in the United States at 5 U.S. factories. These also supply Canada and could be affected by the tariffs. Lindt's CEO says the firm is taking the action to prevent its business in Canada, one of its top 10 markets, from being caught in the crossfire of the trade conflict. At present, 50% of the company's chocolates in Canada come from the U.S. and the rest from Europe. Lindt says it can source 100% from Europe. And it has also already built up inventories in Canada to give it some time to change its supply chain. The Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk have drawn applause from President Trump, but also criticism from others who cite concerns about the security of government data and the legality of some of the administration's actions. Earlier, I spoke with Epoch Times reporter Lawrence Wilson about the spending cuts DOGE has proposed so far. Lawrence, how much has DOGE reported in spending reduction so far?
Well, as of March 2nd, that was Sunday, they have posted $105 billion in savings. That's immediate savings. Of course, there are ongoing savings because some of those contracts and items would have been renewable year by year. So they're doing a lot of data analysis, looking at payments and contracts, and they suggest cuts. Then members of the administration, sometimes agency officials like the head of the Office of Personnel Management or General Services Administration, they actually take action on these recommendations.
And what's Elon Musk's goal for budget reductions by next year?
Well, it's quite a bit. He wants to shave $2 trillion out of federal budget that's a little more than $6 trillion. Now, remember, $1.8 trillion dollars is borrowed to meet that spending every year by the federal government. So if Elon Musk is successful or nearly successful, it'll just about balance the current budget.
And let's go into a little bit more detail, specifically how much money was saved by canceling unused software licenses and redundant software applications. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, they identified a number of software licenses that just weren't being used. And you can imagine things like if you have a subscription to Netflix and you forget to cancel it and you're not using it anymore, that's just a waste of money. So they identified $15.2 million that was saved immediately in just cutting these unused software licenses and other subscriptions of various kinds. And that's 54 million in ongoing savings, assuming that those things would have been renewed year by year.
And what about gender-related programs? How much money was cut?
Well, I don't have an exact total, but here's some examples. 28 million was cut for a diversity and inclusion scholarship program in Burma, also known as Myanmar. 41 million for gender equality women's empowerment hub. Just millions of dollars for projects like that were related to sexuality, gender, diversity projects, millions and millions of dollars.
And what about the reorganization of USAID? How has that impacted government spending?
Yeah, this one's been a little bit controversial, as you know, because this impacts a lot of money that's spent overseas, foreign aid and international development. But the changes so far at USAID, which has not been completely closed, but has been just radically reorganized, $5.2 billion in savings, according to DOGE.
Great overview. Thank you very much for coming today.
My pleasure.
And finally, let's talk about what's happening down on Wall Street. So the benchmark S&P 500 and the Dow finished lower today. And this is coming as trade tensions escalated, apparently, following U.S. President Donald Trump's new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase fell, and with that sending the bigger bank index lower, and car makers Ford and General Motors as well, which has vast supply chains across North America, fell as well. And just a quick update on that. That's all for today's Business Matters.